Welcome to the Nurtured Nerds Epic Podcast.
Come join us and get cuddly, get gaming, get nerdy,
and get nurtured. Woohoo! So hi, everybody. I'm Mary. This is our episode 21. Yay! We're legal now. So cool. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 21. What do you think, Crystal? Is that amazing?
That is very amazing. It is, time flies when you're having fun.
It sure does. Absolutely. If you haven't met me yet, I'm a professional cuddler. I'm a cuddle party facilitator. I live in Salt Lake City. And thank goodness I'm retired from my day job, so I can do cuddle stuff all the time now. That's so exciting.
Woo!
Yeah, I like to garden. I was gardening today, so I'm all sore. But other than that, yeah, life is good. Life is good. How about you, Crystal? Will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Crystal. I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been a professional cuddler for about 5 years. I'm super grateful to be here. I am very nerdy about mental health and psychology and plants and cuddling and video games and my kids and all sorts of fun things. And I'm just amazingly grateful to be here with you two today.
Yay. What are we talking about today, Crystal? You can give us a summary?
Well, welcome, of course, again. This is the podcast for being nerdy and getting nurtured. We're on, again, episode 21, as Mary mentioned, which is amazing. Today, we're actually interviewing David Crane, and this is really wonderful. A legendary video game designer and programmer, the co-founder of Activision, creator of the game Pitfall, classic, and many other classic games. We're also going to talk about some more nerdy things, cuddly things, and let you know what's going on in the community right now. And we still have a raffle for new members to get that care package. So please join us to find out more in our nerdy self-care community.
Cool. And, today I'm drinking hot chocolate with cream in my University of Utah huge mug.
Oh, it started to disappear on us. I love it. That's a classic mug, though, man.
Yeah, it's a great mug. What are you drinking, Crystal?
I have a kitty cat mug. I said yes to the kitty cat mug. I'm drinking... And I'm a big nerd for mushrooms. I'm drinking cordyceps and schisandra. So that's like two fun adaptogen / herbal supplements. And it's very delicious. And I added some oat milk. So I'm feeling good.
And of course, I have my huge water. And how about our guest? David, would you like to introduce yourself and let us know what you're drinking today?
Sure. My name is David Crane. I've been making video games since the late 1970s. I was around making video games really about the time video games were becoming something to play. And I worked in the 1970s. I worked at Atari with Nolan Bushnell. And most people know Nolan. I've heard of him. He created the arcade game Pong that started a lot of this off. And things changed at Atari, and my buddies and I decided to spin off and founded Activision. The main impetus for founding Activision was at Atari, those of us that created these highly technical and highly creative products were not credited for our work. We were considered to be just nameless, faceless engineers in the back lab, and yet our games were very popular and people wanted to know more about the authors of the games. So we founded Activision. One of the founding principles was that the game's creator would be featured on the box, just like a book. I mean, you have a book, it has a title, and you see the author's name. The more famous the author, the bigger the name. Sometimes you'll see the author's name is bigger than the title, which is a little crazy, but anyway, so we followed similar path as the author of a book, and people would find out, hey, I like this particular guy's games, and when a new one comes out and they see the names on it, and I want that game. So yeah, that was a major change in the industry. The second major change was Activision was the first third-party publisher of video games. Now, not to get too highly technical, but if a game is made by the company that makes the game console, it's called a first-party game. If a game is made by someone other than the company that made the console, it's called a third-party game. So at the time, Atari was the only person or only company making games for their Atari 2600 console. And Mattel had the Intellivision console, and they made games for the Intellivision console. There was Coleco with ColecoVision, all these different companies, but Activision was the first third party to publish games on a console. And that was just unheard of. And in fact, that's how it's done today. I was speaking at a conference a few years ago, 600 people in the audience. I asked for a show of hands of who works for a third-party software publisher, and it was most every hand. There were a few guys from Sony leaning against the back wall. Of course, they worked for Sony, and Sony had its own console. But anyway, so those were the big deals of founding Activision in the first place. Had nothing to do with Call of Duty. That came decades later. You know. And to answer your question, I drink Diet Dr. Pepper.
I love Dr. Pepper when I'm on a soda kick. Fortunately, I don't want sugar right now. So, but when I do, I want a lot of Dr. Pepper. Yeah, cool. Thank you for that. You know, when our producer said that we were going to be interviewing you and he was raving about Pitfall, I was like, okay, some old video game, whatever. I'm not really a gamer, but I went and looked for it and I found an emulator and I started playing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember Pitfall. I was there. I was about 10 years old, I guess, when it came out. And I totally remember how cool it was and amazing and how fun it was to play at that time. And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, that's 40 years ago. But yeah, it's awesome. So it's the evolution of video games. I mean, and Pitfall is still fun to play now, which shows what a great game it was. So that's amazing. Yeah, thank you for doing that creativity. And yeah, and I love that.
There is a whole movement on retro gaming that likes to play the older games, because as games evolved, the graphics got better. The imagery, certainly, music, sound effects, it started to become like a movie. But it lost a lot in just fun gameplay. It's really hard to define what makes a game fun to play. I mean, I've talked to people who make these really big games, experiential games where you're out in the Wild West or whatever, and you just go around and it's like a second life. It's not really what we used to do, of making games that were fun to spend some time playing. And they've tried. One guy told me, he said, I tried to make a game like you that was just fun to play on a single screen, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. It was a difficult thing to do.
Different model.
Yeah, I think that some of my favorite memories actually started with Atari. I did collect video games as a child, and I'm just really amazingly in awe of some of the changes and some of the things that you supported and helped to pave the way for us. So, and I really do enjoy retro gaming, or again, what my version of that is. And I think that we all grew up with different things that we were really attached to. I know I loved some Joust and some a couple other Atari games that were really amazing, Centipede and all that. I'm really grateful that you're here. I would love just to hear a little bit about maybe how you consider yourself a nerd in any way. So if there's anything you're passionate about, can you give us any details on that, or maybe even a little bit of a backstory for yourself prior to the video game industry?
Sure. I mean, I grew up with different kinds of technology, a chemistry set and that sort of thing. Video games didn't happen yet. In fact, electronics were very rudimentary at the time. I was doing things in high school that my instructors didn't understand, just because I was at the cutting edge of electronics. But even before that, I was the neighborhood kid who really understood how games worked, what was fun, what made a game. So good example is, you take a board game and it's a board game designed for 4 players. And yet you look around and your friends are there and there's only 3 of you. So one of the fun things about a board game is if you open up the box and look at inside the cover is the instructions on how to play the game. I don't know if you remember any of that or if it's still that way, but
yeah.
I would be the guy who they handed the cover to and say, okay, figure out how to change this game so that it can be played with 3 players. And so I was a game designer, at the age of 10. And I loved technology. So I was a very early adopter on electronics. My high school happened to have a computer programming class in my senior year in 1971, which, there was no such thing as a home computer. There were no computer classes. So I actually got out of high school programming computers in 3 languages. So I loved it. So yeah, I was pretty much on my way to making video games probably from a very early age. Now, what you have to understand is these days, a video game is made by hundreds and hundreds of people. There are 50 people making 3D models for characters, and you've got composers and layout artists and 2D animators and 3D animators. It looks like the credits that run after a movie. There's that many people that have to get involved in these very big video game projects, what we call a AAA game. Back then, it was one person. All of my games made in that era, I was the only person working on that game. So I had to have both left and right brain skills because it was a highly technical task. The computer programming we were innovating every day and new techniques for programming. And at the same time, we had to make something that was not only creative looking, it was visually appealing. So again, left and right brain skills, there were only a handful of us in the entire world who were capable of doing these games. So we gravitated to the top, and that's kind of why Activision was started with the top 4 programmers. We didn't even call ourselves programmers because it's only part of what we did. We were game designers. And we gravitated into a group and we ate lunch together and whatever. So when it came to founding Activision, it's just a bunch of us just said, let's go across the street, basically start our own company, our own publishing company. But then again, it was kind of inevitable, I suppose, given the direction all of my training was going.
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of answered this question already, where you did game design and you were interested in computers. But what was the impetus, or what brought you to like, I'm going to make a video game on my own now? Was there a moment?
Well, I learned something early on about the human condition, and that is that we tend to use our latest technology to amuse ourselves.
Yes.
In fact, it's been quoted as Crane's law, that man uses his latest technology to amuse himself. And I came about it, growing up, I was trying to figure out how to make an electric airplane because I didn't like the noise of the gas airplanes that used to fly around. Mm-hmm. And there was never a power source powerful enough or a motor light enough to be able to lift its own weight and make an airplane. And then some new technology came about. The power sources were made lighter, the motors were made lighter. And the first time an electric airplane showed up was a toy out of Japan. And so here we are, technology that is, massively interesting. I mean, you look at the drones today, everybody, wants to have a drone and fly it around. None of that was possible until this technology was done. And what did we do with it? We made a toy.
Right.
So, I saw the technology that we were doing as, this would be fun to play with. So really, I was making technology to play with.
I love that.
Yeah, it sounds like, again, you have a really wonderful mind, and some things you've touched on a couple times is what makes a game fun to play, what we seek out in game players, and of course just how you've been kind of a game designer from the start. So would it be fair to say, and you have disappeared there, would it be fair to say that you enjoy entertaining, or would you say your motivation comes from wanting to challenge players? Like what, I guess, motivates you in how you create?
If I'm going to be completely honest, I design games that I'm going to have fun playing. I design games for me.
That's good.
So, in many ways, yes, I'm a nerd. I mean, I've programmed computers in more than 25 different programming languages.
Wow.
I've developed games for 24 game consoles. So, very nerdy from that standpoint. But I also played tournament tennis until my knees went out. We found that game designers were more successful if they were well-rounded human beings and not just closet nerds anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of it. Is if I could make a game that would be fun for me to play, then lots of people would like it. And over the years, millions of people liked playing my games, which is great. So yeah, it's if you're making a game for yourself and you represent your target market, you can not only make a game that people like, but you're also successful with it.
Thank you. I'm really fascinated. Again, it does seem like you have a lot of wonderful insight, especially, and a lot of wisdom. So there's so much technology nowadays, and you really touched on something we talk a lot about, which is the self-care and the well-roundedness. I guess stepping a little bit away from talking about video games, what are some of the ways that you, besides tennis or besides some of the other things, about being well-rounded, like what would you say is your favorite form of self-care, or what you depict as well-rounded for yourself?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask that. I mean, I was pretty single focus, I would have to say. I mean, when you're trying to make a video game, we used to, I'll give you an example. Back in our lab at Activision, we took all the ringers out of the telephones. And we made each telephone have a little light on it that would flicker if the phone was ringing. Because you had to get into a Zen-like state to make a video game. Thousands and thousands of details in the program that you tried to keep in your mind at one time so that they'd all be consistent by the time you're done. If you design some section of a video game over here and you're not realizing what you've done before and how it's going to relate to all that, is an extremely high level of concentration. And we found that if somebody walked into the lab and said hello, we had to spend 2 hours getting back into that Zen-like state to be able to do this job. So we turned off the phones. We had a gatekeeper at the door of the lab that, the CEO of the company couldn't come in, without waiting to make sure that we're ready for them. Yeah, very focused. And same thing with tennis. I mean, I like I said, I played tournament tennis, never professionally, but at the highest amateur levels. And the concentration level, John McEnroe once said, he said, I look back on my life and I can't imagine that I was that single-mindedly focused on tennis. There's no, in his childhood, there was no socializing, there was nothing. It was all tennis. So I can't say that I was nurturing in any way. Just very, very focused on what I was doing.
I think that's fascinating that you figured that out at the time. I know that with our current culture of like email notifications and ringing and pings all over the place, a lot of studies have been done that like every time you get some little ping or notification, you're out of I mean, it takes you half an hour to get back in every single time you get one of those. And that's like our whole culture now. Yeah, so minimizing those to get in flow is so important.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And what a lot of people don't realize is every 2 years a new console came out. And you're not just designing a game, you're designing a game to play on a particular console. So every programming technique changes. The background processes we have to create a new audio driver, a new sound effects driver, a new this, a new that, a new graphics compressor, all these new technologies you created every 2 years before you could even write the first line of code for a brand new game. So it was extremely complicated technological effort just to make that stupid little piece of silicon that you play on your console for a while.
Yeah, and you did it all by yourself. I mean, I can't even fathom starting from, I mean, these days there's templates and things. You can just, everybody has done all, like, here's all the drivers and whatever, you can just make the game. But yeah, I don't know. You still work in the gaming industry, is that correct?
I dabble. In fact, I've just recently come out with a new Atari 2600 game. And that's very much like what we had to do before, because the games are sold on plastic cartridges, right? And the injection molding systems for making those cartridges don't exist anymore. So I had to recreate it. So I created an injection mold for the plastic. I created the labels and the boxes and all of these things, and programmed the game. And so with my friend Gary Kitchen and his brother Dan, we created Audacity Games, and recently put out an Atari 2600 game just for fun.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's very exciting. I remember playing it as a child, and I'm excited to see the new versions and the new things that you come up with. Let me ask, what was your getting back to like kind of when you originally started designing video games, what would you say your impression is of the coin ops craze from that period? Do you have like memorable arcade experiences? They're depicted often in movies like Wreck-It Ralph and Stranger Things. And I don't have a ton of experience from the arcades myself. How did you feel about them, I guess?
Well, I lived in arcades. That's what we did for entertainment.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting, Atari made arcade games, but they also made the home games. So while I was working at Atari, there were two different divisions. And, there was a little bit of rivalry there. I mean, the arcade games got to spend thousands of dollars on the hardware, and we were stuck with just a little game that's already in your home, and we could only write software. That's where a lot of the tricks that we came up with came from, is changing the software in order to make the hardware do things that it wasn't intended. I had one time when I was sitting in the Atari's lab, and I sensed that there was somebody standing behind me, and turned around, and it was the designer of the Atari 2600. And he was just shaking his head. And I said, what's up, Jay? And he said, I had no idea that the hardware I designed could do what you're doing right there on that screen. So we were figuring out ways to make the hardware do things that even the designers didn't intend. And that's really why we were able to do such cool things on the Atari 2600.
Yeah.
And have you progressed like through gaming, or do you, as you said, you just designed a new game for the Atari 2600, so it's kind of the retro gaming. Do you prefer like that mode of programming into the way it was then, or do you? You like them both? Are they all good?
To some extent. I mean, we actually did that game because we make appearances at retro game conferences. Mm-hmm. And it's very common. We tell stories of how the games were made and funny things that happened and weird bugs that the software did. And, we just we do a panel at many of these games.
Cool.
Unfortunately, haven't for a couple of years due to COVID. But so at every one of those shows, someone in the audience says, when are you going to make a new retro game for us? And for years, we kept saying, it's in the back of our minds. It'd be fun. We'd like to do it. And we finally went to the effort. I mean, it was a tremendous effort if you think about it. We have to redo everything that Atari did back then in making the cartridges. But that was fun. I mean, the industry evolved from one man, one game, which was in the Atari era, to what you see today, which is hundreds and hundreds of people. $100 million spent over 5 or 6 years, on all those salaries and staff. Mm-hmm. And it evolved slowly to get there. So I have been involved in projects, the one-man projects, and I've been involved in large projects. And really what happens in that evolution, there's nothing revolutionary about it. So it's not a revolution, it was an evolution. And the evolution is very simple. I did all my own art on Pitfall. And I did all my own programming on Pitfall. And I did all my own level design on Pitfall. And I did the sound effects. But there are professional artists who can do pixel art better than I can do pixel art. And there are composers and sound effects wizards. And so what you do is you just take a situation where it was all in one head, and then you spin it out to a professional. So now we have an artist involved, and now we have a sound effects or a music composer. The hardware finally got good enough to have actual score in the game. And so at Activision, we hired a composer, and he would write original music for every one of our games. So artists and composers, and then he gets even bigger, and you have a level designer and a interaction designer and a GUI designer, and that's how it comes to be such large staff. It's really the same task, just split over lots of different professionals.
Which one is your preference, though?
Well, you can't beat one man, one game. You're basically God. I mean, I have to create a world. I have to create a world where there's gravity. If you look at a video game screen and you see a ball bouncing on the screen, that means that some programmer somewhere programmed the X and Y position of that ball to take a trajectory that accelerates in the downward direction. Then it detects that it's touched the ground and it reverses. And based on the elasticity programmed into it, it doesn't bounce up quite as high as it was, and it slowly decays. And then it has to decay to the point where it starts to roll. And there is a programmer that takes every one of those issues into account. You're writing the physics of the world. So when I created a world, I was God. I mean, I made every law, every physical law. So yeah, there's a power trip there. I mean, it's something that, was enjoyable. So I always liked that, but I recognize that there are artists that are better than me, and there are music people that are better than me, and so I've been involved in both. Which do I prefer? I don't know, it could be nostalgia that I enjoy it so much, but those times where it was one man, one project was a lot of fun. And I say that it may be nostalgia because it was also extremely difficult. I mean, there would not be a project that was released without all-nighters. I had one project, a Buenos Blob on the Nintendo, that Gary and I worked on that game together, and we worked 16 hours a day, taking cat naps for 4 hours for the last 4 weeks of the game development, then went to 20 hours a day And then the last 3 days were 24 hours a day just to meet a deadline. So there are times we look back and we said, gee, that was fun. Wait a minute, that wasn't fun. That was horrible, hard work. But we forget that. It's, like you ask a woman about the pain of childbirth.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, will you ever have another baby after that pain? And I've talked to women who the very next day say, yeah, I can see having another baby, even though, So you forget how hard it was to give birth to a video game sometimes, or you never start another one.
Yeah. Like any good project that's worth getting out the door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I was very much feeling the nurturing mom creator vibe as well there. I really like that. And again, you were touching on some of the really, really big challenges of having to birth this passion project. Would you say that, again, co-founding the company and really creating that was similar, the same, or was it a passion project? Were you able to say that some of the hardest parts were the all-nighters as well, especially because you were doing something first of its kind? There was a lot of hurdles, perhaps some pushback from other companies or anything like that. What would you say is the hardest part for that?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I mean, the main point is that it was extremely rewarding.
Yeah.
You can't, unless you've done it, you can't imagine creating an original product nobody had ever thought of before, going through all of the effort of creating it, and then eventually seeing it in the stores. And we would walk into a video game store, and someone would be, in one case, the guy was just unpacking the shipment of our newest games, and we had our pictures on the back of the box. So we walk into this store, and the guy is unpacking these things, and he turns the box over, and he's looking at it. And then he looks up, he looks down, he looks up, looks down. So again, yes, it's very rewarding to be recognized for tremendous creative work, and that made all the work really worthwhile.
I love that.
Let's talk about Pitfall, because I totally remember this game. Everybody knew it, everyone played it. How did you come up with the premise?
You have to think back to that time, and of course it was before most of the people were born, but video games tended to be inanimate objects. 2 tanks shooting at each other, 2 jet planes flying around the screen and such.
Yeah, Pong and Asteroid.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember.
And I just had this desire to create a human-like figure to put it in game. And I tried. And the technology was so limited. Pitfall Harry, the character in Pitfall, is made out of 8 pixels wide and about 20 half pixels tall, and some colors. And to make him look like he was running and animating and pumping his arms and legs and all that sort of thing took a tremendous amount of effort. I mean, I was walking around the lab and sketching the shape of my legs and the angles and that sort of thing, and then trying to figure out how to do it in pixels. And I failed. And then I said, well, I got to do another game. So I would do another game idea that I had and work it all the way through to completion. And then each time I'd go back and I'd say, all right, I'm going to revisit this little running man and see if I can make a game with him. And I had a really nice little running man at one point, and at the time couldn't figure out what kind of a game to make for it. So it was not exactly writer's block, but it didn't all come together. About the 3rd time I'd finished the game and I said, all right, this is it. I am going to make a little running man in a video game. So I took out a blank sheet of paper and I drew a stick figure of a little running man on that picture, and that's going to be my TV screen, right? So I said, all right, the little man's running. Where is he running? I drew 2 lines that made a path. Now I've got a path that he's running on. well, where is this path? Well, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark was in the movie theaters. And I said, well, let's make him run through the jungle. Why not? Why is he running? Let's pick up treasures. Let's rolling logs, that sort of thing. And that wasn't enough. So I said, well, let's put some swamp in there and a swinging vine that you have to swing on. And I remembered a cartoon from the 60s called Heckle and Jekyll, where the characters ran across the heads of alligators. And I said, well, let's put some alligators to jump across. And I really had designed the game in about 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most, on this little sketch. But then designing every pixel of art, writing every line of program, took about 1,000 hours of work from there. Oh. What's interesting about Pitfall that kind of changed the world at the time is when you run off the screen, off the right edge of the screen, you end up on the left edge of the next screen to the right. So it was a screen-to-screen game. And the concept or the category became called platform games, and there were thousands of platform games created after people saw Pitfall. So it had a lot of impact in the genre. But if you think about what that does for you, is if you can run off the right edge of one screen and onto the left edge of another one, that next screen didn't have to be in the jungle. He could have run out of the jungle and into the city. And he could run through the city and he could end up at the docks, and he could run off the dock and be in a boat. So you actually had a much larger universe to work from if you used that technique. So, you know, while I was doing it, I'd have people looking over my shoulder at times and saying, this has got a lot of potential. I said, you know, you got to do this right so that we can, you know, get this potential done. And so I put a lot of extra effort into making Pitfall play really well. And it just happened to be one of the first games that had a human-like figure in it. So people went from, you know, like we said, two tanks shooting at each other to, oh my God, I now have an avatar on the screen. That's me. And if I, you know, trip on an alligator or fall in the swamp, you know, that hurts. That hurts me. So it was one of the first games where you actually had an on-screen avatar, and a lot of people really you know, felt that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can tell that it had a lot of influence. You know, again, I'm a big fan of the Mario Brothers and a lot of the platform games, a lot of the side-scrolling games from my youth, and so I'm really fascinated and inspired by that. So that, first off, thank you for that. I know that, you know, or at least according to some of the research we've done, you know, Pitfall sold 4 million units, and that's a lot. Would you say that you ended up seeing a lot of that, or is this like, were you able to make money on this, or would you have gotten more with or without staying with the company? Like, had you separated?
Well, you know, us old timers who were doing this way back when, we equate more to, if you look at old time baseball players, you know, Babe Ruth didn't make a lot of money. I mean, they didn't make the hundreds of millions of dollars that the players are making now. So, I mean, my interest in Pitfall was mainly that I was a founding shareholder in the company.
Yeah.
You know, I made a good salary and whatever, but as a general rule, I tended, and my partner as well, Gary, I mean, we made good money off of these games. We turned around and put it back into the next game. You know, there's a drive to create this stuff. Yeah. And so I would say that the people who did the best off of my biggest hit games were the hundreds of people we employed in our various companies over the years. You know, we basically kept hundreds of people in the video game business by creating these things, getting the sales, and investing it in the next game. So I had a good career, good life, made some good money, but not not the billions of dollars that you see or hundreds of millions of dollars you see some of these stars getting at this point. But that's life. The world changes.
Yeah, I love that. I've been gravitating toward different coaching programs and things that are more like that. Like, what is enough for you to have a good life, and then build your company, and you don't have to have more than that. I mean, that sounds like the sweet spot to me. So yeah, that's amazing.
Well, and in that process, I've personally published right around 100 games. That's 40 years of work. So some games, some years I'm doing more than one game a year, on dozens of different consoles and in different languages and all that. But I did a lot of learning over the years, learning new stuff.
Yeah, as long as you're feeling supported, I hope, and living the life you want, then it sounds like you have a great career. I mean, congratulations. I love that. Do you have any thoughts on like gamifying real life? This is kind of one of the themes we've been doing at Nurtured Nerds, of like, how do we make our own life fun like a game, so that we can level up our personal character and find our figurative gold bars and treasure chests in the, up in the sky or whatever it is to pull it down.
Well, it sounds like something that you guys have thought about a lot more than I have. So I'm not sure that I could contribute anything. Again, Crane's law is that man uses his highest technology to amuse himself. So to me, this is really all about, you have to work, you have to earn money, you have to buy groceries, you have to do all those things. I was just lucky enough to be able to do that with a career where I enjoyed what I was doing, even all-nighters, and B, people like to tell me that I was doing a good job.
Yeah, I like that too. That's like getting bonuses in the game or something, right? The game of life. That yeah, as human social beings, that I think those kind of things just fulfill us. It's like, here's your gold pop star that says you won something. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have such a rich and amazing level of experience, not only in building games but in life. And it sounds like your intention was very much, to really put together a good game. Not only for yourself. It sounds very well balanced, and that you were working towards pleasing yourself. So making a game that you wanted to actually play, but also your intention was more than money, if that makes sense. You had a lot of grounded energy in like actually creating something cool. So I'm pretty impressed and pretty grateful to make time with you today. I do want to ask about some of the other video games you worked on. Are there any others that have a really major significance that you'd like to mention, other than Pitfall? Any major differences working with those games versus maybe the Nintendo games or any of the other games you worked on?
Well, people ask me that kind of question of what's your favorite game that you did or things like that. And my interest is much nerdier than you might think from that standpoint. Because, for example, I did a game called Grand Prix on the Atari 2600. And Grand Prix has these huge, for the day, cars, multicolored cars, driving around, spinning their tires, doing all sorts of things. And the technology I had to create to make that happen was, it impressed even me. Let me put it that way. It was extremely difficult to make that happen. So I got a great deal of reinforcement out of making that game. But to the player, it's just, okay, I'm driving the car to the left or from the left to the right of the screen, and I got other cars coming on the screen, and it's fun to play. You don't see the same things that I see in the video games because of the level of technology that has to be done to make that happen. Now, that could be done today with a Photoshop picture and a template and a couple lines of code. But back then, to make the Atari 2600 do that, it was a big deal. One of the more interesting games I did probably was a game called A Boy and His Blob. did that on the NES. And
I'm sorry, I missed the name. Could you say it again, please?
A Boy and His Blob.
And His Blob. Okay. Haven't heard of that one.
Well, you'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, sounds intriguing.
The original NES version was the one that I did, and the idea was very simple. I didn't like the way games on the PC were using an inventory control system. If you played any of those adventure games, you would push a button and it would bring up an inventory, and you would change your tool from a sword to an axe or whatever.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the fact that it broke the fourth wall, in essence. In order to change a tool, you had to stop the game. You had to leave the immersive environment and look at an inventory screen and make a selection. Then you go back to the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, let's make a game where you have a sidekick, and your sidekick is your inventory. It's your tool. So I had to put a boy in the game, and I gave him a shape-shifting blob, really patterned after another old cartoon that had these blobs that could change into any shape. And when I was trying to explain this to my partner, Gary, that we wanted to invest in this game, I got a lot of sideways looks. So I said, okay, here's the deal. There's this boy, and he's visited by a blob from another planet. Let's call it Blobolonia. And he came to Earth because all of his people were eating nothing but junk food, and they didn't have any vitamins in their diet anymore. So he came to Earth to get vitamins to take back to his planet of Blobolonia. And he's a little marshmallow man looking guy, and he changes shape. And so the boy carries around a backpack full of jelly beans. And if he feeds the blob a jelly bean of a particular flavor, the blob transforms into a shape. Feed him a licorice jelly bean, he would turn into a ladder, and the boy could climb up the ladder to the next level of the platform game. Feed him another color, and he turns into something else. And so he does an adventure under the city, under the New York skyline, collects money, collects treasures to buy vitamins to fly back to Blobolonia, and yada, yada, yada. So the, just the storyline, you get sidelong glances. You say, what have you been smoking? I mean, it was a strange looking, game idea, but very well received. It was kind of like the first buddy game where like Sonic had, what was the Sonic Hedgehog? He had another character with him. In one of those games, anyway, it was a first sidekick game where you had this blob, and he would run along with you, and you could turn him into all sorts of things and throw him around the maze and help you find your way through the game.
Our producer says it was Miles.
Oh, okay, that's good. So yes, The Boy and His Blob was very well received, very well accepted. I won an award for that by the Parents' Choice Group. So it's Parents' Choice Award for the video game A Boy and His Blob for portraying positive human values. Don't eat junk food, eat vitamins. I don't know.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was one of my best NES games. I did games on Super NES, on Genesis, on the PlayStation. Again, every console that ever came out, as long as I was going to make video games, I had to make it for the latest console, because once the new console came out, the other one just hit the closet, Yeah. People didn't play old games anymore until the retro community came up and said, hey, wait a minute, all those old games are more fun than the new games. Let's go back and play those games.
Yeah, that actually leads into our next question of like, how do you feel about all the retro gaming community and all the revitalizing of all the retro games and stuff?
I try to support it as much as possible. I think they're absolutely correct that if your experience, the experience you're looking for is something fun to do while interacting with an image on the screen, you don't really get that anymore. I mean, Call of Duty is Call of Duty. I can't really call it fun. Okay. So it's fine. It's something else. But the fun experiences that you could have, connected to a TV screen, it's the retro games do it much better.
Yeah, and we've talked here in the group about my vision of games was just that. It's like one person interacting with a TV screen, but there's a social aspect to a lot of the games these days. And how do you feel about that change in gaming?
Well, that's certainly different. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. You walk through them all, and teenagers are socially interacting with someone on the other end of the screen and not the person sitting next to them. But the connection to the internet and social connections, it's fine. I think that trying to gamify it has always been a challenge. I mean, I really did not want to have to take care of a farm in order to play a game and get my friends, could you water my corn while I'm away? I didn't consider that really to be a social interaction, even though I'm sure it was. So yeah, it's another thing. As I said, the video game has evolved over the years. It's evolved to have greater graphics, greater cinematics, and you'd add social interaction to that. You get multiplayer instead of just playing with another person. However, the games that we made back in those days a lot of them were two-player games.
Right. So you're sitting next to the person you're playing with.
That's
probably better.
A funny story about that is if you look at the Atari 2600, it's got two switches on it called difficulty, and they're labeled A and B. And I was there, so I know that the designers of that system, their purpose was to handicap Dad, who supposedly had good hand-eye coordination from playing sports, against his young children, so that there could be an equal, challenge.
That's funny.
So it didn't take very long before the dad was asking the child to take the handicap, because they got so much better at the video games. But still, it was two-player games. Kids would actually be playing with their dads and their brothers. I'm sorry, I'm leaving out the ladies, but most game players back then were boys.
I think there was a lot of closet ladies, though. I think I definitely grew up with a lot of video game happening throughout my life, but maybe not as much arcades. And I think that there's certain type of games I was more drawn to than others. Let me ask, any other, current projects you're working on that you'd like to share with us? Anything coming down the pike that you're excited about?
Well, as I said, founded Audacity Games recently, and first game came out last May, I guess. Unless I'm, with COVID, whole years go by and you're confused with dates, either was last year or the year before. But anyway, we're spending a lot of time on the games. Instead of cranking them out to a year, we're taking a lot of time to make sure that we really create something of value. But we've got several games in development. We don't announce them until they're really ready to sell, but I'm excited about that. We make collectible products. It turns out that the other thing about retro gaming is you can hold the games in your hand. And a lot of gaming right now is downloads. You pay 99 cents at the Apple App Store. And when they change the OS, the game stops working. So the whole retro concept only exists because the consoles are still working. that it was very well made hardware back then. And, you know, you can get an Atari 2600, turn it on, and it actually works. And the same thing with the cartridges. You can collect them, you can hold them in your hands, which is why we give the full color box and the manual and all the things that come with it. So, you know, we're supporting that, and I'm excited to be able to do that.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites that you're displaying at home or that you're holding on to? Any kind of classics or any cartridge style that you like?
I don't know. I've got one of everything. So, in fact, I'm helping a friend move right now, and he's one of those people who has in his basement, he had every game console ever made on a switcher that you could switch to the main TV and play these games. We had to take that all apart. You can imagine the number of wires that were involved in that. But so yeah, we had a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, the whole concept of the way the games are done these days, it doesn't work very well. If you're going to put half a dozen professionals earning professional salaries on making a game, and you have to sell that game for 99 cents, you have to sell an awful lot of those games just to be able to afford to make the next one. And, you know, I talked to people, I said, you know, you don't like to pay, you know, $60 or something for a Call of Duty or whatever. Well, if you like that type of game, go to the store and pay full price, because if the company that made them doesn't make a profit on it, they're not going to invest $100 million making the next one, and you're not going to get that game that you like. Yeah. So that's the AAA side. It's a little different, but I swear I've put out a lot of iPhone games over the years. Many that were #1 in the App Store, and yet you read the reviews, and there'll be some 14-year-old kid who said that game wasn't worth 99 cents. And I had spent 9 months of my life making that with other professionals. To have a 14-year-old kid say, I can get a free game that's almost as good, so I'm not going to pay 99 cents. And I want to grab that kid by the shoulders and say, are you telling me that you got less enjoyment out of that game than out of order of small fries from McDonald's? So anyway, the whole business of making games is not working very well. You end up, if you do make games for mobile devices these days, you end up sitting in a meeting with your publishing group, and you have this meeting that I hate to have. And that title of this meeting is monetization. How do we make money with this game? How do we pluck money out of the child's pocket, sell the game for 99 cents, but make him buy a $1.99 gun, or make him buy this thing over that thing, the micropayments and microtransactions and purchases of extra levels and extra equipment. You have to do it because you can't live on 99 cents. But I hate to have that meeting of how do I take money out of the kid's pocket after the sale?
That's a really good point. And, not only can I feel the passion and a bit of rage coming from you there, but I very much can resonate with the idea that the monetization of it is actually incredibly unhealthy for us as a society. Do you have anything to say on how, these games, especially looking at some of the mobile games, I'm specifically thinking of, do you see an addictive quality or a goal to make it addictive so that it is continually monetized like that? I mean, is that something that you would agree happens?
Yeah, it does happen, and it pretty much has to happen. I mean, if you look back in the evolution of television, when television began, it was fully sponsored. We would have the Westinghouse hour. We would have the Colgate-Palmolive hour. And the only reason there was programming on television was because an advertiser paid to make it so that they could advertise to you.
Yeah.
The only time you got commercial-free entertainment was with HBO or Showtime, and that was a subscription-based system. So you would have to pay every month to get the content from those places. So if you're going to give content away for free, you have to monetize it with advertising or something. I just prefer that, pay $40 for a game and you're done. That's just, that's my preference. You will never go back to that. There is no way it'll ever happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, so many people are giving away stuff for free that people are used to that now. They're like, I should get it for free.
Or 99 cents is the most you would ever pay for a video game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Dilemma of our times. I do have another question for you, David, on a little different track, and feel free to say no if this is going to be too personal, but we are a connection group, that's what we do, talk about human connection. And just as you were talking and of how much you put into putting these games out, I wonder if you would care to share how that might have affected your personal life or your family, or or friends, spending time with them outside of your work. Did that suffer, or was it fine? Did you find balance?
Well, I mean, anytime you're in a deadline and you're working either 20 hours a week or 20 hours a day, or sometimes all-nighters, the family suffers. I mean, my wife had the suggestion to the Activision group that when a programmer or game designer finishes a product, you should be sending the flowers to the wife who put up with it while you did it, So, we'd have a pizza party or something to, celebrate the release of a game or something. But I mean, it was a well-known thing. And in fact, the video game business churned out and spit out an awful lot of people. A lot of people didn't survive it. And, I have friends who went through the same period that I went through, and they will just tell somebody, don't get in it. It's not a way to become wealthy. You're going to give up your personal life and that sort of thing. And so, you do that. I did so less because I had tennis to rely on. I mean, I would play tennis a couple times, 2 to 3 times a week. And that's a very social thing, actually. You go out and particularly I'd like to play doubles, and you'd go out and then you'd end up sitting around with your friends, the 4 people who were on the tennis court, rehashing all the bad shots or whatever. But, there was socialization. But video game business has notoriously been one in which you put your personal life on hold a lot. I just lived with it. I don't know.
I can see that, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's true with a lot of passion projects, by the way.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Passion. Yeah, I'm trying to just think about, like, how can we make the world better so you can do your passion and do your amazing things and still have connection and like have time to feed your family. I mean, I think that's the perfect world if we could work toward that, but I don't have an answer. I don't know.
So your work with Audacity, it's looking to meet the demand for retro gaming. Would you say that this is kind of going back to old school and being less of the 99-cent games? I mean, would you, care to share some of the innovation or some of just how you feel this is meeting that challenge, or attacking that cooperativity versus like online play?
Well, I mean, we started with the Atari 2600 because it was so influential in people's lives. But yeah, I mean, we definitely want to make something that you can hold in your hand and eliminate that whole the 99-cent issue, or the download thing is the worst, because as I said, you can't play that game in 5 years. There won't be a piece of hardware that lets you play that game,
I hate that. There's so many old games I love, and I had him on a machine that worked, and then it's like all of a sudden it doesn't work. Yeah, I hate that.
So yeah, we wanted to make something that you could hang on to. There are a lot of very serious collectors in the retro community as well. And so we made a collector edition that had fun stuff that you get, little tchotchkes that you can't get anywhere else, and limited edition this and limited edition that to support the collectors and such. But yeah, it is definitely a blast from the past. It's doing the things the way we did them at Activision. One of the things we innovated at Activision is if you got a certain score on your game, you could take a Polaroid photo of your TV and mail it in to Activision, and we would send it back a patch, the kind of cloth patch that you would stitch onto your jacket. And so we created the video game achievement is what we created. And I always joke that Microsoft thinks they created the achievements, but no, we did that back in the 80s. And in fact, Activision had a department of 7, 8 people opening those letters all day, every day, and sending out the patches. And it was very popular. It was a brainchild of our CEO. The 4 of us from Atari got connected with a business guy because we wanted to make games. We did not want to be spending our time running the business. And he was a marketing genius as well. So a lot of cool stuff came out of that era. And so, yes, if you you score a certain score on our game, I've created a QR code link that you can actually go right to our website, and it automatically sends you a patch and all that sort of thing. So just like the old days.
Nice.
Very cool.
Except you don't need a staff of 8 opening the mail every day.
No, but I did have to spend 5 months writing software to make that happen.
True. True. Yeah.
I can tell you're very proud, and you've accomplished a lot. It's really amazing to hear you speak about it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good career. I can't complain.
Yeah.
I would walk into a trade show with 100,000 people, and every one of them knew who I was.
Awesome.
So that was kind of nice. I used to joke though that got millions of fans, but they're all 12-year-old boys, and that wasn't really my thing. So, but anyway.
Well, back to us being a connection group here. What would you say to people who want to be in the video gaming industry, as far as like balancing with connections in their life?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are bigger issues. I mean, like I said, where people are so buried into their phones. You solve that one first.
Okay. We're working on it. That's part of what we're trying to do here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a video game is something to do for fun. It shouldn't be an all-encompassing hobby. If you're spending more than 7-8 hours a day playing video games, there is something wrong. Even if you're interacting with friends on a multiplayer game and that sort of thing. As for creating a game, there's a couple advice that I would give. You still need to be a technical wizard to make a video game. There's a lot of help out there, but you still need to be that guy or gal who's got the technical chops. And you have to be either creative or work with someone who is creative. And then you're going to need aesthetics. You need art, graphics, sound effects, that sort of thing. So if you are those things or have those things in your core group of friends, make a game. People ask me, how do I get into the video game business? Well, I'll tell you what you do is if you made an iPhone game, which you can make at home for $99, and you can sign up with Apple for $99, and you have a friend who does art, and you have a friend who does sound effects, or whatever, you can all learn together. You publish a game, even if you only sell it to 12 family members, you're a published author of a video game. And if you then see an opportunity for, hey, I want to do level design for Electronic Arts, and they're offering a job, they're asking, they're hiring, and you go in and you show them that you are actually a published video game creator, you get to the front of the list. So that's my advice: is if you think you can do this, prove that you can do it. It's not a big financial incentive or investment. It does take time. You're going to stop playing those funny video games all day and start working on making one. But you can get into the business. And there are so many different roles now, level designer and interaction designer, GUI designer. And there's so many different roles that if you have a strength in that direction, you want to make a video game, join a company that makes video games and prove that you can do it. I'm not sure that answered your question, but it does, it's an issue that I'm asked many times.
Yeah, no, I think it's great advice. I mean, there's the technologies out there that we can do so much now just from home. Prove you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, no, I think that's very inspiring advice. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity for people to get out there and get involved nowadays. So I think that's really important to know that it just, just try. If you're interested, just go for it. That's what I say.
Yeah, plus I like that you just said, get together with your friends, find your one who's an artist and one who likes the music. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's connection. So
make a team of it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your social connection. I didn't even know I was advising it.
See, you did.
I love it.
Did.
I think it takes a team to run a business. It takes a team, to do a lot of things, to have a family. It takes a team to sometimes create a video game. So I think that it's kind of fun to see both sides of that, to see, how the paths can be a little bit parallel. I'm trying to think how do you think, like, when it comes to like the younger generation, we're working on retro games. They obviously appeal to our generation. They obviously appeal to people that like a simpler game. Would you say that your games that you're currently working on or with Audacity, have an appeal for the youth? And is that something that you're adapting a little bit, whether it's making it more online or whether you're like keeping it pretty simple?
Well, it is certainly simple.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of the other things that are going on there. And without the proper, I hate to use the word indoctrination, but I will, the young person who looks at an Atari game is just going to say, oh, this is just an old thing, and I'm not interested in old things. But among the retro community, I can't tell you how many people are playing Pitfall with their granddaughter, and the games are approachable once you figure out how to hold a joystick, which is not all that easy. Seemed natural back then, but now somebody has to be told, you hold it here and here's the button.
Yeah.
But once you get past that point, like I said, the games are approachable. We designed the games to not require a manual.
Okay.
All right. You pick up the joystick and you start. Pitfall was very carefully designed so that you would master the simple skills before being required to have a high level of skill. You didn't encounter the alligators, or the first time you encountered the alligators, there was a vine you could swing over them. You didn't have to interact with them. And then you'd learn how to run and jump and climb before you had to figure out how to jump over the heads of the alligators individually. So it was very carefully designed so that you could just pick it up and learn the skills that you needed to play as you were playing. So again, that's what makes the game approachable, and that still works today. I mean, a 5-year-old can pick up the stick if they have a parent who explains to them that this is not just an old thing, this will be fun. Get them at least started in it. Then, so yeah, I like making games like that. So the games that I'm making now are like that. they're
Mhm.
they also take advantage of 40 years of training and learning that I've been through. So in fact, I've learned an awful lot since 1982 when I made Pitfall. And I did it. My first game was called Circus Convoy, and it's a character that runs across the tops of semi truck trailer rigs that are pulling circus cars. And you drop down into the circus car, into several of them, and you play mini games inside and such. So it's a very deep, lots of interesting things to do in the game. But each one is fun. You know, you get fun, you learn this, you discover how to get past that clown. You know, you have to learn how to play this game. And I put those kind of puzzles into this game, just as I would have done in 1982.
You know, I miss that. I miss that way that games used to work, where you could just pick them up and you knew, like Pac-Man, you're going to eat the dots and you're getting away from the. I mean, you just know and you learn along the game. The game teaches you how to play it instead of, like, I don't know. I watch people playing like Super Mario Brothers, or I don't even know. It's been a while since I've even watched people, but like, you have to know that you have to go down the surface secret thing and jump this high to get the star at this spot. And like, how do you know that? Yeah. Have to spend 50 hours just learning where the star is. Anyway, I miss the model where you learn the game by playing it and it's obvious what to do next. Because I'm old, apparently. Yeah, I'd be in the retro game community.
Well, it's also funny that everybody has their own idea of what is the golden era of video games.
Mm.
And, you know, it changes for every person.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of people, it's the Atari 2600. And I mean, my cynical analysis of it is it's the time that they got video games gifts from their grandmother and had nothing but time on their hands to play. And so they have all these wonderful memories before life started to hit them with challenges and responsibilities and such.
Mm-hmm.
So your golden age of video games is different than mine.
Yeah.
It's a later group, and it came when, in many cases, when you're in your teens and you got school mastered, so you don't really have to worry about it too hard, and so you got all this time on your hands, and you get to play games and such. So that's what the retro community is, you know, is based upon. Is I remember this golden era, and I want to relive the golden era of video games, even though it happens to be different for each person.
Right, definitely. Definitely.
And that must be a challenge fitting in all those different eras. I'm kind of imagining my golden era and, you know, recognizing that it is possibly very different than many other humans. And even like as generations go, what their idea of retro is. Are you guys kind of taking into account that span that grows?
Yeah, for example, Circus Convoy is, on the surface, it's an exploration adventure game. You've got screen after screen after screen, kind of like Pitfall. I mean, you go running through these different screens, but they're all much more varied than Pitfall ever was. But some people don't like those types of games. So what you actually do is you discover something, and you open a door by doing something over here, and then you climb into this door, and it's an action game, just like the good old single screen action games. And so I tried to put in something for everyone that way. Different types of gameplay that you evolve into finding during the game.
That's pretty impressive. It's definitely put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've done this for 40 years, so I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I can tell.
Looking back, how do you feel about like your whole career? I mean, this is such a hard question to answer, I understand. But it's how do you feel about your place in video game history?
Yeah, ask that question to somebody who's only been in a career for 5 years. It's still hard, but
It's it's true.
I mean, I have reinvented my career, I suppose, many times, but I, you know, on the one hand, some people would just say I was in the right place at the right time. You know, I was living not too far from Atari. I was actually playing tennis, playing doubles, tournament doubles with one of Atari's video game designers. And he came to me, we played tennis, and then afterward we're sitting around, as I said, we always do. And he pulled out an ad that he had written to go into the San Jose Mercury News to advertise for video game designers at Atari, because they needed to expand and make more video games. And he gave it to me to proofread because he was about to, you know, submit it the next day. And I looked at it and I said, this is kind of, you know, like, looks like a good job. I think I'll just do this. So, you know, it was dropped in my lap, and 8 p.m. one night, I was shown this ad. I went back to my day job was at National Semiconductor doing engineering, chips, ICs. And I wrote up a resume on a computer that I had built from scratch at that job, and had an interview at 10 o'clock the next morning, and got a phone call at 2 o'clock the afternoon with a job offer. So that's how I ended up in video games in the first place. But I had been, you know, I told you that I was kind of a game designer in training from an early age. I also, where I saw myself going was making electronic gadgets for the home, making one and selling 1 million of them. I was kind of, you know, the late night TV, Ron Popeil and his Vegematic, and you know, I was influenced by there. So that was going to be my career, my path to riches, was I was going to make something and make millions of them and sell them into the home, which is pretty much what going to Atari did for me. It let me make something, this video game, which there's only one of them when I did get done, and then they mass produce them and make millions of them. So, you know, in multiple ways, I was going that direction. But otherwise, like I said, some people would say I was just in the right place at the right time. The video game business was exploding. But on the other hand, I had all the skills necessary. I had the technology, I had the creativity. My mother was an artist and made her kids take watercolor classes. And, you know, I have paintings from when I was 12 years old. So all of the skills were there at the time when they really made sense. So yeah, it was nice to be part of the creation of an industry that's now bigger than movies and, you know, many other industries combined. So yeah, I like my place in history.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you've had a lot to share, and it's very inspiring and very very awe-inspiring, actually. You know, anything else that you can think of that you'd like to share about either your journey or about, you know, what, you know, advice you'd like to give people today that are inspired by you or that want to follow in your footsteps? I know you've touched on some of that. Just anything else you can think of that you'd like to kind of touch on. We've gone over like the gamut, and you've literally answered questions before we can ask them, by the way. There was so many things we had written that I'm like, this is already getting answered. We've got this.
Well, this is not my first rodeo either.
I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I am fortunate to have landed in a career that I could pursue for 40 years and enjoy it all the way. I don't know who the quote is from, but, you know, choose a career doing something you love and you'll never work a day in your life, or something like that, right?
One of my favorites.
You know, it's true. You want to find something that you're good at, and if you can make a career out of it, there's a lot of enjoyment to be had. It's not all, you know, flowers and roses or whatever, sunshine and roses. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of hard work, but in my case, the hard work was rewarding too. So, you know, it's positive all the way.
Yeah. How can folks find you and support you and buy your games? Where should we go?
audacitygames.com.
Okay.
Our current product, as I said, is Circus Convoy, but we have new games coming out. The etched in stone rule at Audacity Games is we don't announce a game until it's really ready, because we might want to spend another 6 months making it better.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not really, I mean, it's not what we're living off of. So you don't have to say, oh my God, you've got to get a game out by Christmas to you know, make the payroll and hire the people and or pay the people. So
Good place to be.
we can take as long as we want to make it. But yeah, go to audacitygames.com and you can buy the game directly on our website. All it takes is a PayPal account, gets shipped directly to you. Done.
Nice. And are you appearing at like any conventions or anything that we should be going to?
Don't have anything to announce because we have had to cancel the last 2 years, pretty much every appearance.
Right.
You know, we all deal with COVID differently, but I do just have to look at myself and I say, I am in that high risk group, you know, in late 60s and had asthma as a child, which I actually got over. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, so there were a couple times we would have appearances scheduled and then we would look at one in Nashville and there was this unbelievable spike in COVID a couple of weeks before that and we had to cancel. So,
yep.
But we will be going back to the circuit and just watch for your retro game shows in your area. We come, we talk, we autograph games. You know, we just try to support the retro gaming community as well as we can.
That's fabulous. Yeah, thank you.
My family is a big advocate of going to those retro gaming conventions in Pittsburgh. We have one in the summer that lasts like 2 weeks. And yes, it hasn't happened in a couple of years, but I'm very much looking forward to joining them. Many of my family members have been attending for years. So I'm super grateful and super excited and hopeful that it'll happen again soon.
Great.
Well, how are you feeling after talking with us today, David?
Well, it does seem that we've run the gamut of lots of different categories.
Oh yeah.
As I said at the outset, I wasn't exactly sure how this was going to work with, you know, my career doesn't have a lot to do with what you guys are doing today with, you know, your hugging expos and your, you know, a lot of the social consciousness. I just make games. But you know, I'm glad I can tell the stories about how those things were done. There are lots more stories. You want to come to these retro conferences, we tell all the great stories.
Nice.
I love that. And I love the idea of bringing people together. I think that that's the big concept behind Nurtured Nerds is, you know, that a lot of the people that we work with, a lot of the people we connect with are amazing, awesome, unique, nerdy people. And we want to celebrate what you're nerdy about, what you're awesomely unique for, and video games might be one of the most fascinating and beautiful subjects that I think we all kind of connect on, at least in this kind of group we talk about and share. So I feel like there's so much overlap and there's so much potential for more connection, if that makes sense. So I love that you're bringing people together in a lot of ways too. I think it's been a wonderful meeting. I'm really grateful.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you so much for coming to spend your time with us today.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more and you're welcome to stay, or if you need to go off, it's okay. Either one is fine. Of course, it's always wonderful if you want to stay. We're going to talk about a cuddle position of our episode and a couple more things to do, some housekeeping, if you want to stay on for a few more minutes.
Well, it looks to me like my technology is not working very well. I've been winking in and out on that camera.
I love it. You're like a ghost.
I'm like a ghost.
Yeah, I thought that was really like all of your awards back there till I saw that you were like disappearing a little bit.
Those are all of my awards.
Oh, are they? Okay, good.
All of awards. You know,
I thought it was your office.
I hate to have the green screen not working so that people still think it really is an office, but the clutter behind there is, you know, the reason there's a green screen is because of the clutter that's in my office.
I feel that.
Yeah, me too. That's why I've got the screen on me.
Yep.
Yep. Home office.
All right, well, I will disconnect. I'll leave you guys on, but turn off my camera. And
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Wish you well with your podcast.
Thank you so much for your time today, David. We really appreciate you being here with us. Absolutely.
As I said, I was glad to be here.
Wonderful to meet you.
Okay, signing off.
All right. Bye. Well, Crystal, do you have a cuddle position for our episode today that we can try? Did you think of one?
So I've been really racking my brain during the episode, and of course my goal, and especially during when we're talking about video games and gamifying, which we talk a lot about, I try to think about connection and video gaming. And so I'm gonna go back to one of my favorites, and I had two in mind, but I'm gonna go back to what I like to call Mama Bear, Baby Bear. And of course I'm thinking of this because I'm a mama. And this is just where you're sitting right in front of your partner, and you're able to kind of lay together, sit on a couch, sit on a bed, and you can play the video games at the same time. And I know it sounds silly, but that is why I'm really honing in on this one. And so I have at least 3 or 4 that you can play video games together, but that's one of my favorite nurturing / relaxing gamifying.
So is that where like my back would be leaning on your front, and then how do you hold the controller in front of the other person's face?
So the first person would be the one playing. The person in the back would just be playing with the gear.
Just holding them.
So again, I guess if it's a two-player, you're right. It might have to be like a little side angle. We might have to do these sideways Mama Bear.
Maybe we could link arms while you play together. I don't know.
Yes, and I'm such an advocate for quasi cuddling. I usually do that with my son by even just like elbowing a little.
Yeah, just having your arms touching, right? Yeah, that's cool too.
Whatever level you're comfortable with, we can really adapt this pose or the variations on it, companioning even.
Yeah, it really is bringing back memories, because I did play games when I was young, teenager, and we had we didn't really have them at my house. We had like we had the text games. So you'd write it on the computer, go left or get sword or whatever. And my dad and I would actually write Visual Basic games ourselves to do in that genre. It was so fun. Yeah, that was long ago. He had an old oh man, I can't even think of the name of it, but it was like, I remember it had 128 kilobytes of memory, and that was huge.
Yeah. Back then, that was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was a Tandy. Anyway, yeah, this is about like 1987 or something. But yeah, and so I would play the joystick games, or I never really played the Game Boy games with all the buttons. I was kind of out of it by then when those came in. But but I do remember a little bit playing the 2-player games, I played Pong, and I loved Asteroids, and I loved Space Invaders. Yeah.
I loved some Centipede and some Joust.
I never played Joust. I heard about it from Ready Player One. That's where I got a lot of references out of Ready Player One.
Such a good movie as well. I think some of my favorite memories just in general with my dad actually as well were watching him play video games, playing with him, family time where we'd all watch each other play video games. We'd play a lot of NES and a lot of SNES, a lot of Super Nintendo games. Qbert might be my all-time retro.
I remember Qbert. Qbert was fun.
I mean, literally Qbert all day.
and there was some quasi cuddling, because you had to get in front of the screen together, so you'd be touching your legs or your arm. Yeah, it was cute. Anyway,
I used to also connect with people in college, and we'd do little tournaments. We'd do like Luigi's Mansion or Mortal Kombat tournaments, and I wasn't even good at them. I was just literally bringing people together and being like, let's play video games. I love it. So I feel like there's so many good memories and so many good ways to connect and cuddle and be together still. And I really liked what he touched on regarding that. I think that he talks a lot about the ways that it's a lot more disconnected now, and the retro gaming world seems to have a lot of that heartfelt togetherness.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of the new games are like recreating your life in a game. And I'm just like, if I was gonna feed the cat and take out the garbage, I would just do that in real life. Yeah, I don't know those. Yeah.
And I'm less a fan of those. Yeah, I guess I'm less a fan of those as well.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of the shooter games either, because that's what my guy likes to play. And I'm just like, why do you want to just go kill people and get blood splashed up on the screen for an hour? You know, that doesn't seem fun to me. But yeah,
No, I've
to
never
each
been
their
a fan.
own. To each their own.
Yeah. I've
I
tried
like.
to play those, and I've played like the Golden Eyes and kind of the more cartoony versions of them. And
Mhm.
even then, like what's nice
Yeah.
about some of those games is you can talk to people as you play, Minecraft included,
Yes.
Call of Duty. But sometimes it gets a little weird there too. It gets a little intense when you're like, how old is this person that I'm talking to? And what's going on over there? Like, you hear a lot of interesting things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. True. Very interesting. This is just such a deep subject. It's so, and it's not, I mean, it has a history, obviously, as we know, talking to David. It's just
Yeah.
like there's so much to talk about. Anyway.
There really is. I'm really fascinated by the history
Yeah.
of video games and by the evolution of where it's going. And I have to say that it was nice because we were able to touch on it without getting too dark or too heavy, because as a human, as a parent, and as someone who really wants to foster connection, I've seen a lot of the darker sides of like the video game world and how it can be kind of all encompassing and not connective. So I'm grateful
Yeah.
to kind of touch on a lot of that, but also keep it pretty positive and stay on both sides of that.
Yeah, see where the positive parts are. Yeah, I like seeing that, definitely. Okay, well, let's talk about where you can find us and everything and all our promos. So we do still have our website at nurturednerds.com, and we are on Facebook at Nurtured Nerds. We got YouTube. Yep, we got our YouTube channel you can get to. That's where you can find all these podcasts. Go back and listen to some of the old ones, guys. Give us some comments, please. Who's listening? You know, if you listen to this one, just say, hey, I listened. I would love to see that.
Let us know what you want to hear about, what video game you want to talk about, what video game designer you want to hear from, what kind of like content you're looking for. We're all about that.
What was your golden era of video games? What was your favorite time of video games? Tell us, give us some comments, give us some
favorite
feedback.
Console.
Yeah. We do have an email. If you're wondering like what is it to join, you can email to nurturednerdsnewbies@gmail.com. And we're also we have a meetup group that gives the activities when we do nerd breaks, right, Crystal? You put him in there?
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's based in Pittsburgh, is that right? So if you're searching.
Yeah, so right now it does search up in Pittsburgh, and I would love to try to make it more broad, but it doesn't seem to allow me to yet. So we're gonna figure it out. It's hard.
Yeah. So if you go on Meetup and just search on Nurtured Nerds, just choose Pittsburgh for your city, you'll find it. We do still have a raffle for new members who enter. You can win free loot. What would they win, Crystal?
So you can win a Nurtured Nerds Care Package, which does include a free 30-minute virtual session with participating professional cuddlers. Of course, that's with all consent on all levels. We do offer a free ebook by the beautiful and amazing Mary on cuddling and connection, the art of authenticity, and what a magical book. I'm grateful to say I super support it.
Thank you.
A free video game gift card, which can be used to download video games. And of course, you're able to also submit, again, needs to be approved, but totally can submit a question for our hosts for the next Nurtured Nerds podcast. And we always welcome, like I said, feedback. Oh, and you also get, I apologize, I'm like losing it here, discount on our current raid, which is the Jerk Proof Your Relationships. It is definitely worth getting. So the wonderful Cassandra Brown is leading that. She offers payment plans, and we do get a discount, as I mentioned, when you join us here at Nurtured Nerds.
Yeah, and we're discussing what our next raid should be. So if you are interested in if you have an idea, or if you want to be a part of developing our raid, which will be a real life level up kind of a class or activity, then talk to us about it, because you know what, this is a community effort. This is not just me or Crystal, or this is not one person trying to give information one way. This is all of us getting together to work together to level up our own characters. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you would like to do next. Yeah,
definitely. We're always looking to hear from you.
Yeah, and it could be just a side quest, or it might be a raid, or who knows, we're not sure yet, we're developing. I like side quests though. Side quests are fun. I need
agree.
to get that shirt that said it's not, what does it say? Like, I'm not procrastinating, it's a side quest. Have you seen the
Oh, yeah,
t-shirt?
I think I've seen that. That's awesome.
I want to get one of those. Or maybe I'll just put one in the Nurtured Nerds t-shirt store, which
It's
I'm also
all-
developing. So you can
Love
buy
it.
a Nurtured Nerds t-shirt if you want. At Teespring, but we'll have a link on our website once I actually get that posted.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, look for more meetup events. Look for our dance breaks are coming up. We do the Nurtured Nerd meetups, just the nerd breaks. We try to do those once a week if possible. They're really just a nice chance to get to know our community members, to play some fun games and to do some connection work virtually. Especially, during this time throughout the pandemic, it's been such a blessing to be able to connect with people not only across the country, but maybe when I wasn't ready to participate in in-person events. And so it's been a really wonderful experience. And I hope you kind of give it a chance and make some time to meet us.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
We want to celebrate your nerdiness too. You've heard all about our nerdiness by now. So yeah, come tell us about yours.
Love it.
All right, Crystal, how are we feeling?
I'm feeling amazing and grateful and super nurtured. Are we
We're feeling nurtured? Yes. Let's self-hug. Give yourself a hug because we're not there with you. Consensually, of course, only if you want one.
Super consensual hugs.
And think about all the things that you want to say or feel when you're hugging somebody. Do that for yourself.
Thank yourself for coming and for being awesome and for listening to us and for joining us.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dip, 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 dip.